I'm going to share some things with you over the next 2, probably 3 Shabbats that not the same thing, but I've shared in Africa and in India and in Israel and in Nicaragua and in Argentina and a few other places that resonates with the people. You know, like I was in a place called Chepes, which it took me forever to get there. And it's way, way in the mountains, way, 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 way in the northern part of Argentina. If you know the size of New York, that's the size of Chepes. The wonderful people in Buenos Aires called Chepes the Negritas, the lowlifes, just because they're not educated and wealthy. You know, Buenos Aires was the 7th leading economy in the world. And when I got there, the economy fell, and I saw millionaires, literally multimillionaires, begging in the street. It was incredible what God showed me. But up there, it's the size of New York. We were trying to establish an orphanage. And there's girls, 10-year-old girls, 10-year-old girls prostituting themselves for 50 cents. So it's. I just want you to understand some of my experiences. So when I see things here and what people tend to complain about, it's very hard for me. So if sometimes you might say, what's wrong with him? That's what's wrong with him. But I understand. I understand that a lot of people don't see that, and what you don't see, you don't know. And my wife is kind enough to attempt to correct me and to say, look, they just, what you see and what they see is different. So, but what I'm going to share with you, I really feel, everything I share, I use a lot of scriptures all the time because I'm afraid to give you my opinion. And I started doing that when I first started preaching like 25 years ago. I just gave a lot of scripture, like sometimes like hundreds of verses. And that's because I didn't know how to do anything else. I figured if I just give you a lot of scripture, I can't go wrong. Just kind of tie it together a little bit. But as the years went on, I continued to kind of do that because I feel like that's what God wants us to hear, His word, not mine or anybody else's for that matter. Follow? I needed to know though, because when you talk about suffering and things like this, it's not happy talk, and most of you are going through a lot of things. And so I needed to know. I needed to know that on this subject, because it's not the happiest subject, that it was from the Lord. And so I said to God, just, Lord, if there's one person struggling that this would minister to, then that would be okay, because, right? I mean, if you're at a party and there's 100 people at the party and 99 people are partying and there's one person in the corner crying, I would gravitate to that person. Just me. Because I don't need to hang out with the partying people because they're doing fine. They don't need me, So yesterday, when the Berean call went out, I got a text from somebody in Ohio, and he said, I don't mean to disturb you right before Shabbat, but this word from God is just for me. It was so perfect before we even preached it. Somebody already said that. So I feel very strongly that this is from the Lord. I could be wrong. And I don't want to badger the witness. I don't want to say, I don't like that. I don't like when people open up the Bible and say, Father, open up their ears so they could hear your word. Like, that's a little arrogant to me, But I just want you to know before we get started, I feel. Now, let me show you the first screen. Okay. Albert Einstein said, if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. This is coming from probably the greatest mind of the 20th century in the world. Can you imagine? Now, Albert Einstein and I have a lot in common. Wow. Let me explain. He's Jewish. I'm Jewish. He loves math. I love math. This was his pet saying. This is my pet saying. I don't know if you noticed, but I take very esoteric, complex doctrinal issues and I make it so a kindergartner can understand, right? That's what I do. He won a Nobel Prize, and I took third place in the Fall Rockaway costume party for dressing up like a scarecrow back in July of 1967. So with that being said, I'm going to hold up the pen and continue. I was on the phone yesterday also with a pastor, and I just asked him, sometimes I could be confrontational, not trying to be confrontational, but just being me. I said, why do I hear so much coming out of the pulpits today that does not line up with what Yeshua spoke about? I mean, this is not rocket science. This is the guy we're supposed to be following. Lord, Messiah, Rabbi, discipler, whatever, and all of them, those titles, right? But he's the one we're supposed to emulate, right? So his teaching is the teaching that we should be following. Why is the things that he taught and the things that are being taught very different, almost sometimes at opposite ends of the spectrum? And why would you listen to that? Why would you come under that? Yeshua said, I never promised you a rose garden. What I love, I love so much about him, because his timing was perfect. He knew when to be quiet. Some of us don't know. We're always talking. How many ears do you have, sir? 2. How many mouths? What does that tell you? Probably listen twice as much as you should speak. Now you might say, Rabbi, but you speak a lot because you've come here and I'm giving you a sermon. You're not with me the 166 hours in the week where I'm just listening. Listening. He knew exactly when to speak and exactly when not to. He knew when to turn over the table, and he knew when to sit at the table. Amazing. And one thing he did that the world doesn't do, when the world is hiring you, they sell you. The world sells you. It constantly sells you. Even when people are dating, they're selling each other. They're putting their best foot forward. And then you get married. And then my mother said, you don't know somebody till you live with them. Can anybody say amen? Amen. Okay, so what Yeshua was so frank that he told his disciples that he called to the fold, it's going to cost you everything. And if you notice in the Gospels, it's towards the end of Yeshua's ministry that Peter lost it. He lost it and he said, we have given up everything. What is in it for us already? And that's when he said, you're going to be on the thrones judging the nations. But he didn't give them the rewards. He didn't sell them because it was not going to be a cakewalk. Why do we think that they went through it and we don't have to because we're Americans? I've traveled all over the world and I love this country, but let me tell you, we are hated. You think we're liked? We're hated in Australia. We're hated. And do you know why we're hated? Because we think we're the best. And it's arrogant. It's so arrogant. Do I think that when you move here you should learn the language? You better believe I do. Do I think you should be a law-abiding citizen and pay your taxes? You better believe I do. But why do you think in Argentina they should speak English? Because you're American. I love that about him. I love that he was just blatantly honest. Not so much, I'm not talking about integrity in dealings. I'm not talking about that, integrity in business. He wasn't a businessman. I'm talking about he just spoke the truth because he was the truth and he didn't manipulate. I hate manipulation. Look at just a couple of verses in the Gospels. Matthew 10:22 and Mark 13:13. Matthew 10, he's sending out the 12, and in Mark 13, he's talking about the end days. And this is what he says. Everyone will hate you because of me. Who will hate you? What? I mean, I could see if he said some people will hate you. Maybe the religious people hate you. Everyone? Now you got these clowns with landing strips outside their church, seats better than in the freaking movie theaters, and they're telling you unless you're healthy, wealthy, and wise, God's not with you. They're preaching another gospel. They're preaching a diabolical, satanic doctrine that people are falling for left and right. And Yeshua said, in the end days, they'll be deceived, even the elect. And it's not a laughing matter, girl. I don't find this funny at all. People getting hoodwinked? No, it's not funny. But whoever holds out to the end, whoever holds out, you'll see this all over. Matthew 24, all over. He says it always, every time whoever holds out to the end, we got a ways to go. We got a ways to go. Whoever holds out to the end. A marathon, not a sprint. A marathon. You can say, oh man, I was on fire 4 years ago. Great. I don't want to talk about 4 years ago. Not interested. Rabbi, last week, I'm not interested. It's a new day, a new message. I'm not interested. Don't care. Mark 13:13, and everyone, again, every gospel writer, and everyone will hate you because of me. Not because of you. Don't take it personally. Why do you take it so personally? What don't they like about me? I've got to do everything for everybody so they like me. This isn't the political forum, guys. But whoever holds out to the end will be delivered. Will be delivered. Look at this word hate. Of course, he didn't speak Greek, he spoke Hebrew, but the New Testament was written in Greek. So we have to look the word up in the language it's written in. To detest, to dislike intensely, not, well, I'm not crazy about the person. Intense hatred. To pursue, to go after, not just I don't like him, I'm going to get him. You follow? When somebody says, oh, listen, I made egg salad. I hate egg salad. It's not mizeh-o. You're not going to hunt down the egg salad and choke the life out of it. Some may, and that's part and parcel what we have. Look at Luke 10:3. Again, he's sending them out. He says, get going now. Not tomorrow. Don't pray about it. Right now. Okay, this is a word for all of us. Get going right now. Okay? But pay attention. Stop talking. Pay attention. Exclamation point. I am sending you out like lambs among wolves. Do you know what that means? Tell me. It speaks about two things. One, it speaks of persecution, of course. Wolves destroy lambs or sheep. But listen, it also speaks to the fact that the gospel message shall not be forced. Some of you force your theology. It shall not be forced, which totally differentiates our faith from Islam, Hinduism, and every other tribal religion. You think radical Islamic fundamentalists are rough? Come with me to India, and I'll show you radical Hindus that, well, no, I won't. You won't even look at the pictures of what they do to people. They say Islam, Muslim, to bow down to Allah, to submit, Muslim, to submit. If you don't submit, you die. If you don't submit to their God, you die. Our God died. It's as different as when I hear Christians say, well, it's the same God. I'm thinking, who is your teacher? Who you obviously don't know the Bible, and you obviously aren't being taught by a qualified teacher. In John 15, this is his last will and testament, John 14 to 17. 17 is a prayer, then 18:1, he gets taken away to be killed. So you got 14, 15, 16. Last words, last speech. He says in the 20th verse of the 15th chapter, remember what I told you. In other words, I promised you from the jump. I didn't tell you that it was going to be okay, and now, things went amok. I told you from the very beginning it wasn't going to be a rose garden. Remember what I told you, a slave is not greater than his master. If they persecuted me, meaning if they persecute the master, if they'll persecute the master, surely they'll persecute the slave. If they got no respect for the master, surely, and listen, I don't know who you think you are, sweet pea, but listen, you're a slave. You might not like that terminology. I know my people were enslaved for 400 years. That beats black slavery, doesn't it? You don't have a corner on the market. Okay? But I'm a slave to Yeshua. They will persecute you too. If they kept my word, then in other words, if they believed, it wouldn't be an issue. But because they don't, you're getting persecuted. Look at the word. In the Greek, it means to make, run, or flee. They're going to hunt you down. They're going to pursue you in a hostile manner. They're coming to kill you, to harass, to trouble, and to be mistreated. Not nice, but this is what, I'm just saying, like, is these words, how could he say this to his 12 and then we're disciples? It's like they were just untimely born. Sucks for them, you know? Look at John 16:33, how he ends the whole thing. He says, I have said these things to you so that united with me, crucial. That's what it's all about, being united with him. You may have shalom. You may have peace. In the world, you will have tribulation. And let me tell you, some of you think you have tribulation. If you live long enough, and I think what's coming is coming, in this world, you will have, it says you have tribulation. It should be you will have tribulation. But be brave. I've conquered the world. Look at this word. And just I don't want to get into tribulation and rapture. There's too many people that have not read enough scriptures to be intelligent enough to talk about when the rapture is going to be. They've been taught by somebody, and they've just listened to it, and they've been brainwashed their whole life, and they've never studied all the scriptures that talk about the rapture in order to have an educated answer on when it is. But I could tell you that the word tribulation and the word wrath are two totally different words in the Greek language. Okay? The lipsis is tribulation. Wrath is orge, and they're never used interchangeably or in the same sentence throughout the Bible. They're different. So when God says you won't see his wrath, I agree. Tribulation? I don't agree. Okay? Study. I don't want to give you a drive-by on the rapture. Study. Oppression, metaphorically, oppression. He says, in this world, he's speaking to his 12, you will be oppressed, you will be afflicted, and you will have I know, it's not a happy message. I'm sorry. You'll leave here, put on some music, listen to some Chris Tomlin, and go out to eat, and then forget everything I said. He's saying they would be hated. They would be pursued. They would be persecuted. They would be falsely condemned. They would even be tortured. But in spite of all their tribulations, he wanted them to rest assured because they were on the winning side. They were winners. So encouraging. I think it's so encouraging. Now, I'm going to tell you something. I know my friends in the seminarians say that they teach you in the seminary not to talk about yourself at all. And I'm like, wow, no wonder why that thing is so messed up. The word shepherd means to share your life with the sheep to gain their trust. How do you have a connection with somebody if you don't share yourself with them? Isn't that what friendship is all about? I had it way too easy when I was in the world. I don't know why. Maybe you'll come up with an answer. Maybe it was Satan blessing me so I would never cry out to God. But my life was such that, Bernadette will say, everything came my way. Has anybody experienced that? Everything came, and crazy. I'd have a flat tire in front of a house that was having one of the best parties. I'd be invited in the party, make a few people laugh. They'd go out and fix my tire, and I'd have the time of my life. That was my life. Everything went my way, and my mother would always say, everything comes so easy to you. What is it? It was like a satanic blessing. Because I'm telling you, a place like Australia, it's almost impossible to preach the gospel. I was there for 20-something days because they live on an island. It's an island. The country's an island. Everybody lives in the outskirts. The beaches are magnificent. There's no poverty. There's no hood. There's no racial divide. Who needs God? There's social medicine. Nobody's paying too much for it. Put another shrimp on the Barbie. Everybody's having the time of their life. It's a lot easier preaching the gospel in prison. But I had it so easy. And then I thought, when I met the Lord and I give my life over, it's going to be better. Right? I'm thinking, wait a minute, you revealed to me that I'm a dirtbag, so now I'm going to try to walk in righteousness. It's going to be even better. I'm going to flat tire, and they're going to give me a new car. That's what I thought. Did anybody think that when they came to the Lord? Boy, were we wrong. I was so wrong. It's like the Lion of Judah ripped me apart, tore me apart, broke everything down, and still is. Anything that I even remotely idolize will be torn away from me. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? Okay, don't repeat what I'm saying right now at Joel Osteen's church. You're going to get kicked out. But does anybody know what I'm talking about? Have you feel like you've just been ripped apart? And it's not over yet. But the nice thing is the Lion of Judah will rip you apart, and then he'll put you in his arms. You know? And he'll just put you back together better than you would have ever dreamed possible. But it's a lifelong process. Okay? Lifelong process for sure. Now, just for the record, after Yeshua's ascension, suffering remains. It's not like he said, while I'm here. Once he left, and it got worse. It got worse for the early believers. Suffering for the first century believer was the absolute norm. The norm. Okay? It was not an exception. It was not like, okay, some of you might suffer. Suffering is mentioned, like 1 Peter, suffering's mentioned 21 times. The letter's like, yo, big. It's like nothing. It's like a little nothing letter, 21 times. Isn't it amazing that the letter to the people at Thessalonica, which the whole point of the letter is to encourage people who are being tortured or their property's being confiscated and they're being killed. It's a letter to encourage them, and these knuckleheads use that letter to say, oh, you're going to be out of here before anything happens. You want to talk about misusing a letter? You want to talk about taking something out of context? Woo! 21 times in the letter, the great apostle Peter, and he's speaking to believers all over Asia Minor. So I just want you to know, he's not speaking to just some Jews in Jerusalem. He's speaking to the entire believing family. Look, I'll just give you two verses. 1 Peter 4:12 through 13. All I'm doing is laying a foundation. We'll get more into it next week and maybe the week after. I don't know. We'll see what God wants. Dear friends, very sweet. Don't regard as strange the fiery ordeal occurring among you to test you. God is testing us? Don't you test your children? Does he have a right to do that? He sure does. He sure does. He made you. Don't regard it, don't think it's strange. Don't think it's weird. Like, what's going on, God? I don't understand. I thought everything was supposed to be great. Who told you that? I'm just curious. Because I know the Bible didn't. Did you tell yourself that? Like something extraordinary was happening to you, extraordinary, out of this world. Like this is just something, sci-fi. Rather, to the extent that you share the fellowship of Messiah's sufferings, rejoice. This guy's out of his mind. He's kind of saying, he's not saying that what can't be escaped has to be endured. Like, okay, if I can't escape it, then I'll just deal with this hardship. I'll fight it. He's saying it can be enjoyed. Okay, how well would he preach today in America? Listen, newsflash. I don't think that most of these guys can get a job in their denominational churches today. John Wesley, he preached like this all the time. Jonathan Edwards, Presbyterian. It's like, where did they go? It wasn't selling. Doesn't sell. And if you want to sell something, come to America. Rejoice so that you will rejoice. Rejoice now in it so that you will rejoice even more when his Shekinah is revealed, when he shows up. So you don't have to cower. So rejoice a little now in it, and then you're really going to rejoice when he gets here. Guy's nuts. I think he's nuts, and I'm not sure I want to listen to him, but let's break it down, okay? Maybe you want to listen to him. I don't know. Fiery ordeal, it's one word in the Greek. It's not just ordeal, it's a fiery ordeal. A figure drawn from the refiner's fire. What are you saying? I'm saying that any good theologian knows that when Yeshua called people to follow him, he said, hey, girl, you want to come and die? Who would follow somebody like? Can you imagine? Who wants to follow me and die? Nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to die. Everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die. He said, come, I bid you to come and die. I'm telling you what he said. It doesn't matter if I agree with it or not. It doesn't really matter, right? You might say, Rabbi, do you agree with that? Does it matter? No. What's the difference if I agree with it or not? Who cares? I don't care if you agree with it or not. I'm just telling you what he said. Are you telling me that if I follow Yeshua, I'm going to go through refiner's fire? Is that what you're saying? I got a second, then I got to rethink this. Is that what you're telling me? Calamities or I'm going to go through. Are you telling me, Pete? Are you telling me that I'm going to go through calamities and or trials? That's going to test. God's going to test my character to see if I'm legit. All right, let's look up the word suffering. Maybe that's nicer. Maybe Pete gets a little mad. Maybe he was very impulsive, cutting off the slave's ear of the high priest. The guy was a little nuts, I think. So he says that we have to fellowship in these misfortunes. I got to fellowship and I got to rejoice in the affliction. Affliction's a fancy word. It's a fancy word, and this is what it means. Pain, misery, sorrow, and persecution. Pain, misery. Can you imagine? Hey, guys, follow me, and we'll have pain, misery, affliction, persecution, misfortune. I warned you when you married me. You thought I was kidding. Believers in Muslim and Marxist countries are so used to hostility and downright persecution that they absolutely expect it. When you go on a little mission trip, listen, I like these little mission trips, like you go to some place, I don't know, name me the place, Haiti, and you get 25 kids to go, and it costs $4,000 a kid, and you're spending $100,000 to build a roof. Why don't you just send them $100,000? So who's the mission trip for? The kid. Oh, look how poor they are. I'll come back and I'll appreciate that. They're poor. They don't want a duplex mud hut. They need the Lord, and they need some basic education and medical attention. Samuel doesn't want a duplex mud hut. Doesn't want what we want. You follow? That's what they need. So I send the money to them as opposed to send a group over so you can come back and be thankful for what you have. There's too much money invested. It's crazy. Absolutely crazy. They come to expect it. In the 70s, when Corrie ten Boom, you know Corrie ten Boom? She was over in China. I preached in the Chinese church. They could sit on the floor for 5 hours and not even wink and listen. 5 hours, no problem. And you know I can speak for 5, so it was no problem for moi. I was in my element. Here, today, even mainline denominations, they can't go an hour. Can't go an hour. 45, pushing it. Pushing it. You want to build a mega church? You don't speak for more than 28 minutes. You do not. I'm telling you. You check over time. It used to be an hour and 15, then an hour, then 50, 45. Now it's like 28, in some places less than that. I mean, holy jeepers. And they pray, the Chinese church, the persecuted church in the 70s, prayed for persecution because they knew the gospel would go forward. And so we had some nice pastors come over. I'm not going to tell you what denomination, but they came over from America, and they were teaching these people about this. Don't worry, guys. When it gets really tough, God's going to pull us out. The magic carpet ride, right? So they're crying, but they're so respectful, they would never say anything to him. But they pulled over Corrie ten Boom and go, we really appreciate these pastors coming from America, but they're telling us that we're going to be pulled out. Our families are dying now. Please tell them to stop. See how confusing that is? You're being persecuted, but you shouldn't be persecuted, so you must be a bad believer. Just laying a foundation. Believers in the West, different than Marxist and Muslim countries, especially English-speaking believers, with their great biblical heritage, they have not adjusted to the public opposition to the faith because we never have. Has anybody been persecuted, beaten up because you're a believer? Anybody here? No. Now we see the tides changing and wondering, how did this happen? We're so angry. First of all, you trusted in the government? Republican? It doesn't matter if you're Republican, Democrat. It doesn't matter. You're a politician. You're political by definition. We haven't adjusted. The state, remember, used to encourage church attendance back in the 50s? History. The government now is using judges, educational institutions, and media to misrepresent, ridicule, and even defame or badmouth believers. And radio, television, films, all the films that we watch, disparaging. Newspapers, magazines, they promote immorality, cheating, and even blasphemy. Christianity has now arrived to be a counterculture. Okay? Listen, I know I make fun, it's tongue-in-cheek, but everything is not Wednesday night, Sunday morning, and Chick-fil-A on Tuesday. This is Central Georgia, but it's a big United States. And that's part of the problem. We stayed in our little bubble. Look at what James says. James was Yeshua's half-brother, right? He lived with him, same mom, different dads. And if you check the gospel record, he didn't believe in him. He's like, him, the Messiah? It's my brother. My mother gave birth to him. I don't care what these knuckleheads, these few Jewish people think. And he didn't believe. It's a great testimony to the messiahship of Yeshua when he came to faith and gave up all and became the head rabbi of the first congregation in Jerusalem. Check Acts 15, you'll see. But look what he says. His letter, his little letter is 108 sentences. Little letter. They're little letters. 108 sentences. 54 sentences or half is commandments. Grace people hate this guy. Never preach from him. Martin Luther wanted to tear this letter out. It's too works-oriented, I know. Learn your history, please. You think Martin Luther was a great guy? Why? Because of the Protestant Reformation? Remember what I said to you? He who endures to the end. Martin Luther became the greatest anti-Semite in the history of anti-Semitism. In Mein Kampf, Hitler wrote, I'm only finishing what Luther started. Please go home and read some of his letters. Martin Luther said, don't just burn down their synagogues. Don't burn down their houses. Because those Jews, they teach their kids in their houses. Those are their real synagogues. I know, and you went to school and you praised them. If he had a deathbed repentance, then I'll see him. If not, he's done. Doesn't matter where you start, Sweet Pea. It matters where you finish. You can read his letters. It's unbelievable. I don't want to get into it because I'll get crazy, and I'm crazy enough. So leave me alone. Let me move on. Just leave me alone. Let me get away from him. Okay? James 1:1-2, from Yaakov, a slave of God. Here we go again. Another slave. Peter's a slave. James is a slave. What does Paul say? A slave. They don't think much of themselves, huh? A slave of God and of the Lord Yeshua the Messiah, to the 12 tribes in the north. So he's writing to all the believers. Shalom. He starts out well. Imagine that. Hey guys, peace. And then he goes right into it. Record it all as joy, my brothers, when you face various kinds of trials. Wow, he got right into it. Like started so well, you know? Hey, peace. Want to go out to lunch? Look at what this word, trials, is defined. I'm just laying a foundation. The test of a man's fidelity, virtue, and constancy. Now, can you go back to that for a minute? That James 1? The first thing I noticed, the first time I read this way back, because I didn't have a teacher, I came back from Israel, and for whatever reason, I don't know why this happened, but I didn't know that you had to go to a house of worship. I guess I was just starting to read the Bible and I didn't get to Hebrews yet, so it took a while. But what I did, for whatever reason, I spent 3 years reading the Bible. That's all I did. I read it every day for hours and hours and hours and just talked to people and evangelized and read and evangelized, and the Word got in me pretty good for 3 years. When I first read this and I saw, regard it as all joy, my brothers, when, I noticed right away it didn't say if you face various kinds of trials. That's the first thing I picked up on. I picked up on the fact that these problems are inevitable. And they often come uninvited. Anybody with me? They come uninvited and unexpected. Sometimes they come singly, and sometimes they come in droves. Like, what? You know? Aneurysm, melanoma, and a dislocated shoulder. Like, what do I take care of first? Sometimes they come in droves. Sometimes they come singly. The believer's life has its fair share of problems. For that matter, I just got news for you. Life has its fair share of problems. I have a lot of non-believing friends. It's not like their marriages are operating great and their kids are doing well and their health is great. It's not like cancer just hits the believer. I know some believers think that. Oh, this is the devil. Oh, the devil gets much too much credit. You know what I mean? Oh, Lord, why'd you take him? The spirit of Kentucky Fried Chicken took him, not the spirit of the Lord. Now, this is my $64,000 question, guys. Oh, boy. We're not going to get too far, are we? No. The $64,000 question I have for myself and for you is, how are we going to react? Since they're going to come, and we can't stop that. The only thing we can control is how we're going to react. And I'm going to give you, I love threes, not because 3 is the number for divine perfection. It's God's number, so I'm going to give you 3 options. You might come up with 4 or 5. I'm not saying that this is the end-all, be-all. You know that. This is not exhaustive. I don't give you every scripture on suffering. We'd be here too long. But there's 3 options. Option one is to rebel. What I mean by that is you or I or us, we adopt a spirit of defiance. In other words, fine, you did this to me, then I don't need you. I'll go through it alone. Or, you're God, for God's sakes. You could have prevented this. I mean, you are God, aren't you? And then when we rebel, we then faint. We do, because without God, you can't make it. So then we detest it, we despise it, and then we lose heart and give up under pressure. I am not judging anyone here. I am not judging. I am not telling you that if you faint or you rebel that you're no good. Life's problems get overwhelming, and I fully understand in my own life and in yours. I am not judging. God is not judging. I'm sure not. So if you think I'm telling you that you got to be tough all the time and have faith all the time, you're absolutely wrong. I'm telling you that this is very natural. I'm trying to just help all of us through it. God, where are you? Every single solitary person has said it in their heart at least once in their walk. If you say you never did, you're a liar. God, where are you? God, don't you care? And then we give into what's called divine betrayal, which is the enemy's number one weapon. The enemy's number one weapon is to get you to believe that the good Lord has betrayed you. If he can do that, he wins. He wins. Option 2 is wallow in self-pity. We have massive problems, and then we think of no one but ourselves, and those problems get bigger and bigger and bigger till all we are is the problem. And then what do? We try to get sympathy from others, letting them know, you don't know what it's like. You've never been through this. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Option 2 is a favorite. You don't know. What have you ever experienced? What do you know? Life is great for you. My mother would say, life is not great for everybody's got issues. Physical, financial, emotional, mental issues from their past. Insecurity. That's all arrogance comes from. Arrogance is just answering the issue of insecurity. That's all it is. What this leads to, option 2, friends, is it leads to anger, loneliness, depression, and an overall spiritual darkness. We go into a cave like Elijah, and we say, nobody understands, nobody gets it, and this, I've said it, nobody cares. You know? I'm like, man, I give everything to these people. I'm sick, I don't hear from nobody. Some people that are closest to me, it's like, really? I just went to get a window tint that I went to this place, I went there 6 months ago, and the guy, just a worker, he just said, I said, are you okay? You look like you're limping. I got a herniated disc. So can I pray for you? 6 months later, I went 2 days ago, 2 days? Friday, yesterday. And when I walked into the shop, I said, hey, how you doing? He goes, I remember you. I said, yeah. I said, how's your back? He couldn't believe it. He couldn't believe it. He goes, what? You remember? I said, yeah, you told me. Of course I remember. Why wouldn't I? So sometimes you get in that place where, and Bernadette tells me, look, everybody's caught up in their own life, Greg. It's the way it is. Everybody's got their own problems in their own life, and that's the way it is. Just accept it for the way it is. And you could go into this. Option 3, which is obviously the road less traveled, is you make the decision that either God promoted it or permitted it. But if he's in control, then it had to pass by his desk for approval. He either sent it or allowed it. Okay? And if he did either promote it or permit it, then he did it for some good reason, because God is good. Even if we can't see it, and even if we can't understand it, and listen to me, some of you spiritual dynamos, you don't know. So please shut up. His ways are not your ways. As high as the heavens from the earth are his ways from yours. Who knows the mind of the Lord? Who gives him counsel? How dare you? Do you know how many times I've heard somebody say, well, maybe it's this, and I know the Lord's saying, it's not that. He didn't tell me what it is, but he goes, it's not that. Why do you feel like you have to be everybody's counselor? He has a counselor. It's called the Holy Spirit. Let it counsel the people. Get out of the way a little bit. And then, when we realize that there's some good reason, look, sometimes it's just sin. Sometimes it's just rebuke. We go, the devil's doing it, and God's going, no, it's me. The devil works for me. The devil works for me. I made all things, he says. I made all things, even evil for the day of destruction. That's what it says in Proverbs 16:4. You're like, the devil did it. God's going, no. Like, if I ever had to spank a kid, the devil's not doing it, it's me. The devil's not in me, I'm doing it. I haven't had to spank them in forever. They do? They do what? Oh, they do. Oh, they do. Oh, okay, we'll take care of that. But no, when you instill a certain amount of fear, it just takes a look. It's a beautiful thing, and nobody even can see the look. It's just, nobody knows. They're like, oh, I'm doing it right now. They won't even move. Won't even move. And then we accept that. We just accept. It could be rebuke. It could be not. It doesn't matter. God's doing something. It's going to turn out okay. And then we grab onto God with everything we have, because we realize he's our only hope. You see, we sometimes think that these things, these fiery ordeals, are coming on us like, God, where are you? And we did it. We did it. We're the sinners. We ruined the world. He didn't. The oceans were clean when he made them. Revelation 3, we start to throw toxic waste in there. Why? Because if we do it the right way, it's too much money. And it's all about money. And so we've done the wrong thing, time and time again. And then, like it's his fault, we do the wrong thing and blame him. Something goes right, we take the credit. Something goes wrong, he gets the blame. Who wants to be God? Can you imagine if every time in your family a parent does something good, the kids go, I did it. When something goes bad, it's your fault, Dad. That's crazy. There's a proverb about that. Find it and write in and see if you know which one it is. There's a proverb about God getting all the blame because of our folly. It's crazy. Absolute insanity, spiritual insanity. So it's our fault. So what are we going to do in this situation? If we give up on God, then where do we go? There's nowhere to go. Listen, if you're a devout believer, and I believe most of you are, he messed you up. You're a mess. You got nowhere to go. Remember Yeshua, are you going to leave too? They all left. He's like, if you're going to leave, just go now. If you're going to abort the mission, just go now. Where are we going to go? You messed us up. Okay, so the most painful question, I could be wrong, to me, is that what confronts the believer is why. The why, to me. So I'm just going to give you a couple, and I don't know. Let me try one. to discipline. Look at Hebrews. Hebrews is a bunch of Jews who will believe in Yeshua. And every single one of them were persecuted. Not a couple. If you were a Jew in the first century and you believed in Yeshua, you were persecuted. All the stuff confiscated, imprisoned. That's why it says visit them who are in prison in Hebrews. They're being tortured. They're being killed for their faith. That's simple. So Hebrews 12, we're coming to the end of it. He says, also you have forgotten the counsel which speaks with you as sons. My son, don't despise the discipline. We're disciples, right? That's where it comes from. Don't despise the discipline of Adonai, of the Lord, or become despondent when he corrects you. For Adonai disciplines those he loves and whips everyone he accepts as a son. Does that sound familiar? It's Proverbs 3. It's just a reiteration of Proverbs 3, verses 5 and 6. 11 and 12, rather. 11 and 12. Now, all discipline, while it is happening, verse 11, does indeed seem painful, not enjoyable. It's not like, thank you, sir, may I have another? It's not enjoyable. But for those who have been trained by it, trained, harnessed, trained, discipled, that's what it means. It later produces its peaceful fruit, which is righteousness. So what is God after? He's after righteousness. That's what it looks like to me, okay? Love is not only revealed through care and affection, but also through confrontation and correction. Love is revealed through confrontation and correction at times. Discipleship is just another word for child rearing. Did you always love your kids, or did you confront them and correct them? Some didn't, and now look. Well, my father was so harsh to me, so I'm going to give my little angel everything. Don't let your little angel marry one of my little angels. Discipleship is just another word for child rearing. It's about instruction and training and correction. And for what? Look at the word righteousness. This is what God is saying. This is why he does it. This is why God does it. The condition acceptable to God. He wants to make you acceptable to him. Not for salvation. Righteousness is a free gift. But brother, you got to grow up. That's why there's some people that come here, I hear them say, I've been fed milk. You know, who wants to be, you're like 40 years old, you've been in the faith 27 years. But take the bottle, baby. Saved by grace. I mean, yeah, we get that. It's incredible and we should never forget it, but now we have to grow. We go to the next stage. The condition acceptable to God, which necessitates, God's saying it necessitates correction of thinking or feeling. It's following the Lord is not ever about feeling. Loving is never about feeling. You know how many times you're in a relationship and the person gives you all the reason not to feel like loving them? Imagine if God operated on feelings. I feel like slapping the crap out of you. But I'm not going to go with feeling. I'm going to go with love. So we have to correct our feeling and our thinking. Thinking, this is where it all happens. The heart is good. The mind, it will kill you. That's where the battlefield is, in the mind, and that's where Satan goes. He goes for the mind. Each and every time. Let me show you what this Methodist minister said way back. Okay? Leslie Weatherhead. Listen to this. Like all men, I love and prefer the sunny uplands of experience, where health, happiness, and success abound. But I have learned far more about God and life and myself in the darkness of fear and failure than I've learned in the sunshine. In other words, through his darkness, he was humbled. He was humbled. He didn't consider himself high and mighty anymore. Okay, he was humbled, and that's what God loves. When they asked Yeshua, who will be the greatest in the kingdom, he did not say there is no caste system in the kingdom. Don't you worry about it. If you're blood bought, everybody's equal. He said, you who are the most humble, you who are the most dependent, you who not think, I'm not saying beat yourself up. That's crazy. I don't want my kids to ever say that. But why do you think so much of yourself? Muhammad Ali, Michael Jackson, Prince, we hear about them for 2 days and they're gone. And these were world-renowned people. There are such things as the treasures of darkness. Thank you. Listen, I know I tend to side on the humility and side on I must decrease. Look, apart from him, you can do nothing. In him, there's nothing you can't do. I want to encourage you that if you're in him, there's nothing that you can't do. But it's all about being in him, and it's him that makes something out of nothing. It's him. There are such things as the treasures of darkness. What? The treasures of darkness? You know what I'm talking about. The darkness, thank God, passes. But what one learns in the darkness, one possesses forever. Brilliant. Absolutely, positively brilliant. Can I give you one other? Yes. Okay. I'm going to give you three. I'm not going to give you three, maybe. What are you looking at? You. You want to see how far I have to go. You're unbelievable. You're my own. Where do I go from there? Slave driver! This is what I wanted to give you today. I don't know if I'm going to get to it. It doesn't matter. Three that I see. Three reasons why we suffer according to the Bible. Three of the majors. And then I want to come back and give you my three, if I may. Okay? So that was just one for discipline purposes. Let me try to just give you two. Is that all right? Yeah. Who's going to say, no, shut up, you idiot. I want to go home. I'm hungry. Imagine how bad you'd look. Shut up, idiot. I'm hungry. Enough. All right, I get it. I'm supposed to suffer. You're making me suffer more than anything. Look, I love you so much. I love you so much, and I know a lot of you. Some of you I don't know, but a lot of you I do know, and I know how much you've suffered. And I want to encourage you in that. And I want to tell you overall that people that don't suffer, when the crap hits the fan, they're not going to be able to deal. Just like in 1929, those fat cats in the stock exchange, when their life was their money, they got on the windowsill, baby, and they committed suicide because they lost their bank. But you who suffers, you're going to be ready. Number two, to produce perseverance. Look at James 1:3. To produce perseverance. For you know that the testing of your trust produces perseverance. That's the third verse of the first two that we read earlier. Look at the word perseverance. Look at the word. It's steadfastness. It's the character. My mother used to always say in Yiddish to me, charakter, son. I don't care how big your muscles are. I don't care how many trophies you have. I don't care how well you're doing in school. Charakter. Your heart. Your heart. She said it to me all the time. I never listened till I got saved, but that's another story. Maybe she would have pronounced it right. Why are you always speaking Yiddish? It's America, Mom. Charakter. What are you saying? Charakter. I had a charakter. Once I saw a dermatologist, he gave me 7, went away in 3 days. It's right here on my thigh. Charakter. Charakter. The character of a man who is not swerved from his deliberate purpose and his loyalty to faith and piety to holiness by even the great. That's crazy. Are you saying that God does this so that when another one comes, I'll be ready? That's what he's saying. I'm not saying it. That's what James is saying, right? That's what he's saying here. Unbelievable. It's a constancy. God wants us to preserve under misfortunes and trials. He wants us to learn how to keep on keeping on and not give up. He pictures faith as some precious metal. We're precious, but tried by God to see if it's genuine. The metal gets subjected to the fires of persecution and sickness and suffering and sorrow. Without problems, how could we develop endurance? You can't spell testimony without... That's cheesy, right? I'm sorry. But how would you have it? What's your testimony? Okay, try this one out for size. I was really wealthy, like just killing it. And so I'm in first class going to the Bahamas with my blonde bombshell Barbie doll wife who's had more plastic surgery than Joan Rivers. And I'm there and I'm drinking champagne. And all of a sudden I yell, Jesus, save me! You really think that's going to be the testimony? There's no testimony in that. You can't have a testimony like that. Whenever somebody gives me a testimony, it's always like, they were down and out, right? But God, right? That's always the testimony. That's the testimony. So even men of the world understand that problems strengthen character. They do. Let me show you another quote from this guy Spurgeon. You know him very well. 1835. Now, everybody thinks Spurgeon had these crowds, right? That's what you know about Spurgeon. He had thousands coming to the London Tabernacle. You know how many people disparaged him for smoking a cigar? Well, he was Baptist. Anyway, my point is, he used to have to write letters to his father. Dad, don't believe them. What they're saying about your son isn't true. He had so many haters. Thousands, hundreds of thousands of people that hated this guy. And he was persecuted all the time. He says, I am afraid that all the grace I have gotten out of my comfortable and easy times and happy hours might almost lie in a penny. Try preaching that in the mega Baptist church today. And he was their guy. What I'm saying is he's the guy. He's the guy. He's the guy. They have books. Whenever I go, would you like to read books about? I said, I read about him. I know he's tough. But the good that I have received from my sorrows and pains and griefs is altogether incalculable. What do I not owe to the hammer and the anvil, the fire and the file? It's rhetorical. He's saying he owes everything to it. Affliction is the best bit of furniture in my house. Try that. Try preaching a little Spurgeon. And look, there's a guy, Charles Kettering. Listen, he was an inventor. He holds 30 honorary doctorates, 186 patents. One, the electric starting, and if it wasn't for him, you know what you'd be doing when you leave here? Cranking it up. Cranking it up. How about, does anybody like air conditioning? You know you do. Remember when ours went down and it was 86 degrees in here and people were like, I gotta get out. It's 86, I gotta get out. I think I have a bead of sweat on my head. I grew up without air conditioning. Anybody else? The projects were made of Adobe. It was like 1,000 degrees in the projects. He invented Freon, so you gotta like him, right? I love the houses where the guy's the cheap guy who wants to put it on 94. And his wife wants it on 64. And as soon as he leaves to go on some kind of trip with friends, she brings it way down. You know who you are. He said, problems are the very price of progress. Problems are the price of progress. You can't progress without problems. Desperation is the mother of all invention. Don't bring me anything but problems. Good news weakens me. Guy's nuts. Number 3, and then we're done. Okay? We've got to discipline. That's a major part of what the Bible says our suffering is. To persevere, to learn perseverance. So far, so good. And this one I like. Enlarge our ministry towards others. Okay? 2 Corinthians 1:3-4 says, praise be God, Father of our Lord Yeshua the Messiah, compassionate Father. Isn't that beautiful? He's speaking about sufferings, but he says our God is compassionate. God of all encouragement. Our God is encouraging. Of all encouragement and comfort. Isn't that beautiful? He says our God is totally compassionate, full of encouragement and comfort, and then he talks about suffering. Who encourages us in all our trials so that, what's the reason? So that we can encourage others in whatever trials they may be undergoing with the encouragement we ourselves have received from God. There's an old saying, he who suffers much speaks many languages. You'll hear me talk about Molly, you'll hear me talk about people, you'll hear me mention Chris Fryer, you'll hear me mention people, because I don't forget. I just will never forget. To me, it's the ultimate disrespect. There was a lady that used to go here, Lisa Quigley. And I'll tell you a little story, and we'll kind of end. Lisa was a very, 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 very good friend of mine. Lisa heard from God all the time. And she would stay up in the midnight hours and email me, and she's a very good friend. The way I met her, back in 10 years ago, about 10 years ago, when she first started coming, Bernadette and I, our office was our house, so when the phone would ring, it would ring like 3 in the morning, whatever, we'd answer it. She's homeschooling, and she was the secretary, she was the administrator, she put all the CDs together, and she ran Shabbat school. And that's why she lost her mind. I mean, and we both did, because we were doing everything that you see here, we were doing in our house. Our kids suffered, because how do you answer the phone all the time? Counseling, they came into the house. All the meetings in the house. It was so wrong and so abusive, and I just didn't know. I just thought, you can't ask people for help because they won't. You got to do it all. Just ignorance, and it screwed us up big time. But one day, Bernadette went out with the kids. I think, did you go to Thomaston or something?
Yes.
Yeah, what was there?
I don't remember.
Yeah, okay.
I lost my mind.
Okay, yeah. That's right. Why would you remember? You don't have a mind. So she went to Thomaston, and it was like a day that I wanted to just sit and meditate with the Lord, because everybody would come to our house. It was nonstop. It was insanity. Insanity. The youth group would meet there. It was insanity. So for whatever reason, the phone rang, and I answered it. Shalom, Beth Yeshua. Phone rang. And so at the end of the day, she says, I'm going to be home in like 10 minutes. And I just worked the whole day like an imbecile. So I said, do me a favor. Can you just keep the kids out for like 20 minutes? I want to just sit. I'm going to take the phone off the hook. I'm going to sit, and the phone rings, and I just said, I'm not getting it. And the Lord said to me, it's amazing. I didn't want you to get one phone call today, but this phone call I want you to get. And this was the phone call. Shalom, Beth Yeshua. Is this Rabbi Greg? Yes. Hi, my name is Lisa. I just started coming to your congregation a few weeks ago. I just found my son hanging from a rope in his bedroom. And I went, and I'm not a good counselor. I'm just a good crier. I'll cry with you. But that's I mean, I don't go with 2 scriptures and call me in the morning. Not my style. And I didn't know what to say, so I just started wailing, just wailing and wailing. And, we got very close to her and all that stuff, and ministered to her, and, all the time. She was an amazing, amazing, amazing woman. But there was one time, about a couple of years later, that some girl came to the synagogue. She was just passing through. I don't think I've ever saw her again. She came up to me afterwards, and she said, my brother committed suicide. I immediately called Lisa. She had left the synagogue, but I immediately called her because I knew. She said, I'll be right there. And she ministered so beautifully. Now, I'm still saying that all these things happen. None of it's good. And it shouldn't have. It wasn't in God's plan, but it does. It happens. But so it's not for naught. So it's not a waste, so their memory could live on. And she went through a tough time. She basically contracted cancer. I mean, we all have cancer cells, you know that, right? They're stem cells. Every single one of us has cancer cells. And sometimes they proliferate, and they sometimes cause problems, depending. But she went under such a level of stress that she got cancer, and she died because, and we did everything. You want to talk about fasting? We fasted 120 days. We marched around the house. Anybody was there? We marched around the house. There's nothing in the Bible that we couldn't have done. But she could not live without little Timmy. And she wanted to go and willed herself. An unbelievable believer. Did her funeral in, where was it? Indiana. No. It was Peoria, Illinois. I'll never forget her. Never forget her. Affliction, guys, can be outward. Let me show you outward affliction. 2 Corinthians 6, 4 through 5. He says, we try to commend ourselves in every way as workers for God by continually enduring troubles, hardships, calamities, beatings, imprisonments. This is, and let me just tell you, when you read 1 Corinthians, you're seeing Rav Shaul. You're seeing Rabbi Saul. You're seeing the great teacher. When you read 2 Corinthians, you're seeing Pastor Paul. He's exposing his heart. If you've really disseminated the letters, he's exposing his heart. And what he's saying in those letters is, I could take the beatings. What I can't take is your pain. That's what saddens me the most. And this is what I'm going to get to. This is the exterior, the beatings. People don't, it's very unusual that somebody will kill themselves okay, sadly enough, would take their life over physical pain. But mental and emotional anguish is torture. More torture than some of you even know. I've experienced it in my life, and it is just a prison. Just a prison. 2 Corinthians 2:4, now we're talking about affliction on the inward side. I wrote to you with a greatly distressed and anguished heart, and with many tears. Not in order, when he says to the people at Philippians, listen, for some of you that are really kindergarten believers, and I'm not trying to be mean, but when he says rejoice always, why is he crying all the time? He was saying that to people at Philippi, trying to encourage them because they were being persecuted. Nobody can rejoice all the time. Oh, mom died. Let's rejoice. When you go up to somebody and go, he's dancing with the Lord, you are causing so much more pain than the person's experiencing. Why would you say that? Wait till the shoe's on your foot and see if dancing with the Lord for your little boy is good enough. There's a time to mourn and a time to laugh. Read the Bible. Forget the Bible. How about some logic? Do you have any human logic that God has blessed you with? He's saying with many tears and an anguished heart. Look at the anguished heart. Look at what he's saying. The word is distress, excruciating sorrow, not a little pain. Sorrow that just can't be heartbreak. Look, I'm going to tell you something that I'm just going to tell you something. We're here 13 years. 13 years. 13 years. Long time. The average pastor in ministry, 3 years at a place. 13 years. In 13 years, thousands of people have come through. In 13 years, one person came to us to tell us they were leaving the right way. One person, Mr. Devout Christian. Such a great Christian. One person. One. I'm not talking about the person that moves away and says, Rabbi, is there a synagogue in Spokane? I'm talking about they come, they get ministered to, they get benevolence, sometimes best friends, and they leave without. Who would do that? Well, I don't want to be confrontational. But then when I see you, you run. You look like an idiot. You're an adult. You're a Christian. You're supposed to suffer for the Lord, but you can't even see me. It's staggering. One person, he sat down with me. This guy was a young guy, and he just said, and he was a drummer. He was a great guy. But he just sat down with me at the bagel store. He met with me. And I was going to ask him to get involved in youth. It was funny. I said, I'm glad you called this. He goes, the Messianic lifestyle is not for my wife. Bernadette and I would never try to keep you. In not a million years. We get it. Why do you think we don't have membership? You're free. How many of you are going to go to church tomorrow? I don't know. I don't care. You're free. You're free. Well, I can only come here once every 6 months. You're free. Just, can you be decent? Can you be a decent human being? My God, in the secular world, they give you 2 weeks' notice. You know what your 2 weeks' notice is? Well, Rabbi, in 2 weeks, you're going to notice I haven't been here for 2 weeks. Like, if it's just fly-by-night and you decide not to come anymore, no, there's no need. But when you've been at a place and you've participated and you've been involved and you've even ministered and you just take off, you're a Christian? You're not even a decent human being. You're not even a decent human being. I got friends in the secular world that are better. You think you're a good example for Jesus? It's pathetic. Pitiful. And that's the heartbreak. The heartbreak. And then people say to me, Rabbi, can't you forgive? First of all, you don't even know what you're talking about. You weren't even involved, so shut up. Secondly, of course we forgive, because if we don't forgive, we wouldn't hear from God. But you can't forgive somebody to their face if they never apologize for what they've done. And if they never apologize, then maybe they think they didn't do anything wrong, so how can you reconcile? The next time your spouse commits adultery and he comes home and he says, oh, it was nothing. I have nothing to say I'm sorry for. See how that works in the relationship. Or if he splits for 6 months and then comes back and says, hey, honey, I know I haven't been here for 6 months. What's for dinner? You feel what I'm saying? It's sad. Some of us are so in the books, so in the scriptures, but we're not decent, doing very decent things. And it is not a good witness to the lost. That's why they stay lost. Nobody cares how much you know till they know how much you care. And you hop from one place to another and you say nothing. Kids, don't do it. Don't do it. Be honest and open. So that's what we've gone through. We've experienced what Pat Benatar experienced. You're a heartbreaker, dream maker, love taker, don't you mess around with me. But, listen to me. Now let me tell you the other side, because you might think, he's kind of angry. Yeah, I am. Yeah, I pay your mortgage, I take care of your kids. Yeah, and then you leave and don't say anything, you better believe it. You're a lousy individual. Yep, but there's the other side. And I just ministered this to a friend of mine yesterday, a rabbi, who's going through it. He's going through it. 50 people split and opened up another. Listen, in Messianic Judaism, this is unheard of. It never happens. We would never open up a synagogue within 50 miles of another. We wouldn't do it. It's just not God. It's just not God. It's not God. Why do you need a Baptist church across the street from another Baptist church? Why do you need a Messianic synagogue across the street to another? It's not God. I got news for you. You think it is, it's not. And then you're like, well, if he pisses me off, I'm going to go to the one down the street. Go, who cares? Go. I call it blessed subtraction. Don't let the door hit you where the good Lord splits you. But the Spirit of God reminds us that we follow the man of sorrows. 25% of all that Yeshua said was rejection. 1 out of every 4 words, you count up the Gospels, 1 out of every 4 words he talked about rejection. He said you're going to be rejected. Everything Yeshua said was about you be rejected. The more you do for God, the more the devil will be hot on your trail. Yet God always finds a way to comfort us. Hallelujah. This should remind us that when we are comforted, we should look for every opportunity to pay it forwards and pass it on. Don't avoid the sick room. Don't avoid the death room. Go for it. But look, the more you get bit by the people, the more you want to hide. Right? You want to hide. You don't want them to see you like this. You don't want them to see you angry because you got to be a happy, peppy Christian all the time. Everything's good, right? Which is not reality. It's not your reality. You're not living like that behind closed doors. God sees it. Why are you afraid to show it to us? There's going to be no healing in that because there's no legitimacy. There's no genuineness. So you get bit, and you say, I'm going to go back. Because why? Because Yeshua got bit, and I follow the man of sorrows. And until I could say with all my heart, Lord, forgive them. They know not what they do. Then I have not arrived. So I shall keep going back and getting bit and keep going back and getting bit. There's people that leave for 3 years, then they come back, they don't even say anything. Like, at least say something. Remember we used to come, we haven't been here for 3 years? It's like, hey, what's up? How you doing? Really? What are you thinking? Get out of here with that. That's not Yeshua. You got to keep going. You got to die. And dead men don't get hurt. You got to die. And you know what the sad thing is? Sometimes we experience like a knucklehead will hurt us so bad. And then sometimes we'll be angry. Maybe we'll take it out on people that love us. And then we make that mistake. So I want you to know some of you have kept away from us a little bit because you feel for us and you know, especially people that know us intimately, you know what we've been through. I'm sorry that you had to feel like you kept your distance. But for those of you that know me well, I'm crazy about you. Absolutely crazy about you. And there's not a day that goes by that I don't pray for you and sometimes cry for you. And that's honest. That's my heart. So understand, you know, when you get bit, you get bit. We used to live in the shark capital of the United States, the world, by New Smyrna Beach. And you surf, and sometimes you get bit. And you have to second guess going back, but you love surfing. So you go back. And then if you get bit again, you think, after 5 or 6 bites, you kind of say, I'll just lay in the pool. But God tells us over and over again, you can't do that. Where are you going to go? And I say, you messed me up. I got nowhere to go. I got nowhere to go. So you keep going. Listen, guys, be nice. Stop it. You're so freaky. You want things your own way. You develop little coups in your little stupid meetings. That's not what Yechad's about. What's wrong with you? It's about unifying. Not saying, I don't like this, I don't like that. Stop it. What's wrong with you? Who do you think you are? Die to yourself. Die to yourself and stop having to have it your way. Let it be his way. Let's stand together. All right, next week I'll give you a couple other things that I think are absolutely, positively invaluable about suffering. We'll get on with it more and more. It's going to build next week, and then it's going to build the third week. It's going to be really a good series, I think, for all of us, because I have this uncanny feeling that life isn't going perfectly for everybody here. Right? And I do love you, because if I didn't love you, I wouldn't speak like this. Okay? It's easy to put on a facade and smile and say, this is the day the Lord has made, and then go home and go, like the flight attendant, thank you. Are they gone? My face is killing me. That's so phony. If that's what you want, it's out there. But that's not what you're going to get with us. Amen. Okay? The way I am here, the way I dress, the way I act is the way I act on vacation, is the way I act in my house. I'm not going to put on a facade. Okay? If I'm going to put on a facade, I'll go to Hollywood and make some real money. Well, not with this hair, but years ago. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. And may the Lord lift up his very countenance upon you and give you his peace in the name of the Prince of Peace, Yeshua. Yivarecha Adonai ve'yishmerecha. Ya'er Adonai ponav elecha ve'hunecha. Yisa Adonai ponav elecha ve'asem lecha. Shalom. Shabbat shalom, guys. I love you.